All right, everyone. So there have been a lot of talks about a potential Chris Jericho return. In an article from Ringside News is titled WWE Creative Hasn't Discussed Chris Jericho Return. Speculation about Chris Jericho possibly jumping back into WWE in 2026 just hit a wall. And this time, it's not coming from Jericho himself, but from people inside WWE Creative who say they haven't heard his name mentioned. The latest Wrestling Observer newsletter claimed that AEW insiders and WWE sources are preparing for Jericho's return to WWE as a Royal Rumble surprise once his AEW contract expires at the end of 2025, Dave Meltzer reported. There are those in AEW who believe that he's not going to be back and will start in WWE as a Royal Rumble surprise. But in a sharp update, Fightful Select is pouring cold water on that entire narrative. Not only is Jericho not being discussed internally at WWE, but even people in AEW say it's unlikely anyone outside of Tony Khan and Jericho himself would even know what's really going on. Observer also reported that people in AEW believe Chris Jericho isn't coming back. Those that we speak to in the company say that Jericho's creative is usually discussed directly with Tony Khan, and most people wouldn't be in the know. And as for WWE, sources say there's no movement there either. We have to reiterate Chris Jericho has not been discussed within creative of WWE, and many in the company have no clue if his contract is frozen or is ticking. This means all the talk about Jericho shocking the world in January might just be noise, at least for now. Ringside News will continue to monitor the situation and provide updates as they become available. Okay, so look, for starters, it's always interesting because one thing I've noticed with WWE over really the past year is that they're getting better and better and better at just shocking the world, and things that you would think would leak, things that you think would get out there, they just don't. And I'm not saying it's this case, right? And I understand that, look, news outlets can be wrong. The Wrestling Observer newsletter can be wrong. Dave Meltzer can be wrong. But I find it interesting that who exactly is he talking to on this, and what is the kind of the speculation here? And Fightful Select is really good too. So, a lot of their stuff I think definitely is worth, paying attention to and taking, we have two people here that are saying kind of contradictory things, but nowhere in here does it say that this isn't going to happen. And I'm just going to point out that I would not be shocked if WWE has this plan and they continue to kind of put out there, no, this is not something that's going to happen. No, this is not something that's going to happen. We saw this with the Seth Rollins injury, right? The Seth Rollins injury, we covered it pretty thoroughly because we were looking at it from the standpoint of, yeah, I think this could be a ruse for him to cash in. And then when he didn't, we said, oh, maybe it's the case that, he's actually injured. Maybe this was a real injury and not a fake one. And when he went on Rich Eisen, we said, yeah, that's probably the case. Wrestling Observer newsletter was one of the places that had it, right, that they were reporting that there was a potential that it was a work, that they didn't have confirmation that it was, but that there was potential that it was already in motion prior to that. So they didn't know that it was a work, but they said there was talk that that potentially was an angle that was thought about. But when there was no cash in that night, we thought that basically puts that to bed. However, as we know, that actually came to be true, right? As we know, that was actually the case. So I'm not going to say this is definitely happening. I haven't done all my research on, Chris Jericho and what his current relationship is with WWE. My guess would be it's not all that great because he's in AEW. Could be though. I haven't really looked into a ton of that, but I can't think of a better name to return at like a Royal Rumble than Chris Jericho. You hear the music hit and boom, right? You got to get that iconic break the walls down, that. But that would be one amazing return. And one thing we know about WWE, and I think the Triple H era is continuing to try to do this, is they want those moments because those moments are what make the pay-per-views. You need good matches, you need good stories, but those shocking moments, the big return, the, big ending, all of that is what makes a pay-per-view. And so just having a Chris Jericho return will do a lot, I think people will be hyped about it. So thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.